Welcome back to my YouTube channel, where we dive deep into the rich and fascinating world of coins and numismatics. And today, we turn our full attention to the Jefferson Nickel minted in the year 1953, a coin that represents more than just 5 cents in value. It is a piece of American history, art, and legacy. To begin with, we must understand the origins of the Jefferson Nickel series, which started in 1938, replacing the Buffalo nickel, which had been in circulation since 1913. The new nickel was introduced during the administration of President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and its main purpose was to honor Thomas Jefferson, the third President of the United States, and the principal author of the Declaration of Independence. The design of the Jefferson Nickel was created by artist Felix Schlag, who submitted the winning entry in a competition hosted by the U.S. Mint. His original design was revised before final approval, and in the end, the obverse featured a left-facing profile of Thomas Jefferson, while the reverse depicted Jefferson's famous home, Monticello, located in Virginia. The coin was first struck in 1938 at 3 major mints: the Philadelphia Mint, which used no mint mark, the Denver Mint with the D Mint mark, and the San Francisco Mint using the S mark. And this pattern continued through the years, including the 1953 edition which we focus on today. Now, stepping into the year 1953, we must place ourselves in the context of post-World War II America. This was a time of immense social change, economic growth, and Cold War tension. The country had just elected Dwight D. Eisenhower as president, and there was an air of cautious optimism across the nation. In the world of coinage, the U.S. Mint was adjusting to peacetime needs and had resumed full production after the restrictions and adjustments during the war years. The 1953 Jefferson Nickel was produced at 3 different locations, again, Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. However, this would be the final year of regular Jefferson Nickel production at the San Francisco Mint until many years later, which gives the 1953 Jefferson Nickel a special place in numismatic history. The San Francisco Mint actually stopped striking regular issue coins after 1955, focusing instead on proof and special mint sets, and not returning to general coinage production until decades later. In total, the U.S. Mint produced more than 143 million Jefferson Nickels in 1953. The Philadelphia Mint led the way with over 76 million coins, the Denver Mint struck over 59 million, and the San Francisco Mint contributed approximately 19 million, and because of this, the 1953 Jefferson Nickel is considered the key issue of the year, not for its mintage, which was still in the millions, but for the historical significance of being among the last regular strike coins from that mint during this era. From a design standpoint, the 1953 Jefferson Nickel remains consistent with previous years. It features Thomas Jefferson on the obverse, with inscriptions along the rim, including "In God We Trust, Liberty," and the date. 1953 on the reverse, the image of Monticello is centered with inscriptions reading "E pluribus unum," Monticello 5 cents, and United States of America. However, collectors often look at finer details such as strike sharpness, die polish, die deterioration, and plancher quality, and many Jefferson Nickels of the early 1950s can be found with weak strikes, particularly from the Denver and San Francisco mints, due to worn dies and aging equipment. Collectors today place value not just on the mint mark, but on the condition and rarity of the coin. Full steps designation is especially important. This refers to the number of clearly visible steps on the Monticello building on the reverse side of the coins that exhibit 5 or 6 full steps without interruption are graded higher and are significantly more valuable in the market. The 1953 Jefferson Nickel from Philadelphia is notoriously hard to find with full steps, making those specimens particularly prized by advanced collectors. It is also important to note the changes happening at the U.S. Mint. During the early 1950s, the Mint was working to modernize its equipment and coinage process, but still relied on traditional mechanical presses and hand-prepared dies. This meant quality control was not as consistent as modern standards, and coins from this period often exhibit variations from die-wear doubled dies, re-punched mint marks, and even some planchet issues and errors. Errors and varieties of the 1953 Jefferson Nickel are an important part of its numismatic interest. Collectors have discovered re-punched mint marks, especially on the 1953S and 1953D issues, where the mint mark was punched more than once by hand, resulting in overlapping impressions. There are also examples of die cracks chips off center strikes and lamination errors, which add to the appeal for error coin collectors and specialists. Looking deeper into the economic and cultural aspects of 1953, the nickel remained a fundamental part of daily commerce. It was used in vending machines, jukeboxes, and transportation systems. A nickel could still buy a loaf of bread or a bus fare. In many places, the average American may not have thought twice about the 5-cent coin, but it circulated heavily and carried the story of Thomas Jefferson and American ideals into the hands of millions. Jefferson as a figure is a fitting choice for a coin. He was a visionary founding father and advocate for liberty and education, and the founder of the University of Virginia. His influence on American political philosophy remains profound, and his inclusion on a widely circulated coin helps keep his legacy alive to this day. As we continue this video, we will examine examples of high-grade 1953 Jefferson nickels, look at certified population reports from grading agencies like PCGS and NGC, and analyze price trends in auctions and online markets. We will also explore stories from collectors who discovered these coins in circulation or inherited them from relatives, and we will discuss the role these nickels play in complete Jefferson nickel sets and registry collections. We will take a close look at grading standards using visual examples to show the difference between a circulated coin, a mint state coin, and a full steps example, and we will compare these coins across the three mints, Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, explaining the minor differences in DI characteristics, metal composition, and strike quality. As we continue our exploration of the 1953 Jefferson nickel, it is important to look at the broader context of American coinage during the 1950s and how the values of this time were reflected in the coinage system. The early 1950s was a time of national rebuilding, industrial expansion, and growing prosperity, following the difficult years of World War II and the Great Depression. The United States Mint played a vital role in reflecting stability and continuity through its coin designs, and the Jefferson nickel was a symbol of that era. The coin itself was struck in a composition of 75% copper and 25% nickel, a durable alloy that had proven effective since the late 1800s. This composition remained consistent. Despite changing demands for metal during wartime, the nickel itself was part of daily commerce, but it also represented technological achievement in minting processes that were becoming increasingly complex in the post-war years. The 1953 Jefferson nickel featured no significant design changes from the 1938 original, but subtle shifts in die wear strike sharpness and planchet quality make this year particularly important to specialists. There were significant inconsistencies in the strike quality of the Denver and San Francisco coins, and this adds layers of complexity to grading and valuation. The San Francisco Mint, which had a rich history dating back to the California Gold Rush, was nearing the end of its regular coinage run in 1953. This makes the 1953S issue not only a low mintage coin, but one of the last circulated coins produced by that mint before it transitioned to proof and collector sets only for the next several decades. Now let us go deeper into the minting process itself. In 1953, coins were still struck using screw presses and manually prepared dies. This meant that human error was more frequent and differences between coin batches were more visible. Mint marks were hand-punched onto dies, and this led to a wide variety of mint mark placements on 1953D and 1953S coins. The Jefferson nickel as a series is one of the most collected coin types in the United States. Many collectors build full date and mint mark sets with a focus on condition and varieties, and the 1953 coins provide a particularly interesting challenge for these collectors because of the limited availability of full-step specimens and the uneven quality of minting across locations. Let us look closely now at the full steps designation, which is awarded when the steps on the Monticello reverse are fully struck and separated. Collectors highly value this designation as it reflects the sharpest strikes and best preserved dies. Coins with 5 or 6 full steps are rare, especially from 1953, and this makes them highly sought after by advanced numismatists. In population reports from major grading companies like PCGS and NGC, we find that 1953 Jefferson nickels in mint state with full steps are extremely limited in number and often command high premiums at auction. For example, a 1953 D nickel with full steps in MS66 condition can sell for several $100s, and in some rare cases over $1,000 when the strike is exceptionally clean. As we shift into the collector culture surrounding the Jefferson nickel, we see a vibrant community of hobbyists, dealers, researchers, and auction houses who actively study, trade, and catalog these coins. Collectors often search for raw examples in old rolls, coin jars, and estate sales, hoping to find unrecognized treasures among common pieces. Specialist collectors also pursue error coins, which were more common in the pre-modern minting era. Examples include off-center strikes, where the design is visibly shifted to one side, clipped planchets, where part of the coin is missing from the edge, die cracks that appear as raised lines across the surface, and lamination errors, where the surface layer of the metal separates during striking. All of these can be found among 1953. Jefferson nickels, and each error tells a story of how the minting process sometimes broke down under pressure. Turning now to the proof versions, although no proof nickels were struck in 1953 due to the temporary suspension of proof sets from 1943 to 1949, and their reintroduction in 1950, proof Jefferson nickels were only made in Philadelphia starting in 1950 and continuing thereafter. Thus, 1953 does not have a proof version, but collectors often compare it to proof-like examples which occasionally appear among high-grade business strikes with especially reflective fields and sharp detail. Looking at the design of the Jefferson nickel in a broader cultural sense, we see the portrait of Jefferson by Felix Schlag as a product of 1930s neoclassical design. His rendering of Jefferson was based on sculptural representations and historical paintings, while Monticello on the reverse was inspired by classical architecture and designed to symbolize Enlightenment reason and individual liberty concepts that Jefferson championed. In fact, Monticello was more than just a home. It was a reflection of Jefferson's personality, his intellectual curiosity, and his architectural talent. Its inclusion on the coin was not just a backdrop, but a representation of the American ideal, the pursuit of knowledge balanced with a life of service and humility. Finally, let us turn our attention to investing and collecting trends. The Jefferson nickel series is often undervalued compared to silver coinage, but this provides a unique opportunity for collectors to obtain historically significant coins at accessible prices, especially for mid-century issues like the 1953 nickels building a complete set with full steps. Examples from each mint remains a challenge that attracts both new and experienced collectors. In conclusion, the 1953 Jefferson nickel is far more than a simple 5-cent coin. It is a bridge between the wartime economy and the prosperous years that followed it, is a closing chapter for the San Francisco Mint's role in circulating coinage. It is a product of early 20th century design paired with mid-century minting technology, and it is a challenge to collectors who seek quality, rarity, and history in every piece they examine. This concludes the extended historical narrative, but we will now proceed with visual comparisons, coin grading walkthroughs, auction price data, and collector interviews in the remainder of this video, where we explore the fascinating and rich world of old coins and numismatic treasures. And today, we are going deep into the long and intricate history of the 1974 Washington quarter, a coin that many of us have seen countless times but few truly understand in terms of its historical context, metal content, minting variations, collector demand, and potential value in the coin market. The story of the Washington quarter begins far before 1974, with the origin of the story of the Washington quarter begins far before 1974, with the origin of the design itself tracing back to 1932, when the United States was looking to honor the 200th anniversary of the birth of George Washington, the first president of the United States, and a figure deeply revered across generations of Americans. The original design was submitted as part of a competition where several renowned artists competed. But in the end, the chosen design came from John Flanagan, a sculptor whose interpretation of Washington's likeness was inspired by the bust created by Jean-Antoine Houdon. The reverse of the coin featured a heraldic eagle with outstretched wings, perched on a bundle of arrows with olive branches beneath, symbolizing both readiness for war and hope for peace. This design became an iconic representation of American strength and values, and it remained largely unchanged for decades, including the year 1974, which is our focus today. The 1974 Washington quarter was minted at a time of economic change and cultural transition in the United States. The early 1970s were marked by inflation, a shift away from silver coinage, and changes in how coins were produced, handled, and collected, since the Coinage Act of 1965 quarters had been made of a copper-nickel-clad composition rather than the 90% silver used in earlier decades. This means that the 1974 quarter has a core of pure copper and an outer layer of 75% copper and 25% nickel, giving it a total weight of 5.67 grams with a diameter of 24.3 millimeters. The coin bears the obverse of George Washington facing left with the inscriptions "Liberty," the motto "In God We Trust," and the year 1974 below his profile. Now let's talk about the mint locations and how that affects the value of the 1974 Washington quarter. These coins were struck at 3 different mints: Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. The ones struck in Philadelphia carry no mint mark, while the Denver coins show a small D on the obverse to the right of Washington's ponytail, and the San Francisco coins have an S mint mark. The Philadelphia and Denver coins were released for general circulation, while the San Francisco coins were generally minted as proofs and targeted toward collectors. The total mintage of the 1974 quarter was immense, making it a common date among Washington quarters, but there are subtle differences that can make certain examples far more valuable than face value. The Philadelphia Mint struck approximately 801 million quarters in 1974, while the Denver Mint produced about 353 million, and the San Francisco Mint struck around 2.6 million proof coins. What makes the 1974 quarter interesting from a collector's standpoint is not just the sheer numbers, but the condition variations, die varieties, and minting anomalies that occasionally occurred during production over such large quantities. Condition is everything in coin collecting, and that brings us to the concept of coin grading. Professional graders use a scale from 1 to 70 called the Sheldon scale, with higher numbers indicating better preservation, a 1974 Washington quarter. In heavily circulated condition may not be worth much above face value, but in mint state or uncirculated grades, especially MS65 or higher, the value can begin to climb dramatically. Collectors also prize full strike coins, especially those with full details on Washington's hair and the eagle's feathers on the reverse. Another factor to consider is luster, or the brilliance of the coin's surface, which can be lost over time due to handling exposure and improper storage. Let's now take a closer look at the proof coins from San Francisco, which were struck with special dies, polished blanks, and multiple strikes to bring out mirror-like fields and frosted details. These coins were not intended for circulation and usually came in sealed sets, purchased directly from the mint. Although common in terms of overall quantity, these proof coins are sought after in high grades, especially when they are free of haze or spotting and maintain. Strong contrast between the frosted devices and the mirror backgrounds, known as cameo or deep cameo, finishes the presence of these visual characteristics can significantly increase the market value. There are also error coins from 1974 that can be worth much more than typical examples. Errors, such as off-center strikes, clipped planchets, double dies, and struck-through errors where foreign material interfered with the strike, can all be quite valuable to collectors. One of the most sought-after errors in the Washington Quarter series is the double die, especially if visible on the date or lettering while not officially confirmed as existing for the 1974 issue. Collectors remain on the lookout for any die varieties or anomalies that could drive interest and demand. Beyond physical aspects, the 1974 quarter reflects a moment in American monetary and cultural history. It was minted just after the U.S. officially ended the Bretton Woods Agreement, which had tied the dollar to gold, and at a time when inflation was beginning to impact the economy, the cost of metal production was rising, which explains why the U.S. had already moved away from silver content in its circulating coinage nearly a decade prior. The copper-nickel composition of the 1974 quarter ensured durability and cost-effectiveness, but also marked the end of an era when coins had intrinsic metal value. The coin is both a monetary instrument and a historical artifact, capturing the design ethos and economic strategy of the mid-20th century. Collectors who focus on Washington quarters often assemble full-date and mint-mark sets, and the 1974 coin plays a central role in any complete collection of clad quarters from 1965 to 1998. This period is sometimes overlooked compared to the earlier silver issues, but it is gaining respect, especially as high-grade examples become harder to find due to natural attrition from circulation and wear. Finding a 1974 Washington quarter in pristine condition can be a challenge, and prices at auction reflect the scarcity of such coins, with examples in MS-67 and above fetching significant sums due to their rarity and demand from registry set collectors. Registry sets are competitive collections registered with grading services like PCGS and NGC, where collectors aim to assemble the finest possible set of a given coin series. The 1974 quarter plays a pivotal role in such sets, and that contributes to the rising prices seen at auction for top-grade coins over the past decade. Prices for high-grade Washington quarters have increased steadily as demand grows, and the supply of well-preserved examples remains limited. Coins with strong eye appeal, sharp strikes, and original luster are especially prized and can command premiums, many times face value. In conclusion, the 1974 Washington quarter is more than just pocket change. It is a product of historical forces, artistic legacy, minting technology, economic change, and collector passion. Whether you are searching through your change, welcome back to my YouTube channel, where we explore the fascinating world of coins from across history and around the globe. And today we are diving into the rich and complex story behind one of the most iconic and sought-after American coins ever minted, the 1909 wheat penny, also known as the Lincoln wheat cent. And more specifically, we will focus on the inaugural year of this coin, which is filled with historical intrigue, political significance, artistic innovation, and numismatic value that continues to captivate collectors and historians alike. The story of the 1909 wheat penny begins in the early 20th century, at a time when the United States was experiencing rapid industrial growth, urban expansion, and significant social change under the leadership of President Theodore Roosevelt, a leader known not only for his domestic and foreign policies, but also for his deep interest in the aesthetics of American coinage. Roosevelt believed that the coins of the United States should reflect the artistic and cultural dignity of a great nation, and he sought to reform what he saw as bland and uninspired designs on the nation's circulating currency. To carry out this mission, Roosevelt reached out to renowned American sculptor Augustus St. Gaudens, who had already established himself as a master of classical and Renaissance-inspired sculpture. St. Gaudens began work on new designs for several coins, most notably the $20 double eagle and the $10 eagle, both of which are today considered masterpieces of numismatic art. However, St. Gaudens passed away in 1907 before he could complete his vision for the entire spectrum of American coinage, and that left an opportunity for another artist to step into the spotlight. Enter Victor David Brenner, a Lithuanian-born sculptor and medalist who had immigrated to the United States in the late 19th century. Brenner had gained Roosevelt's admiration after designing a medallion of the president, and in 1909 he was commissioned to create a new design for the 1-cent coin, a denomination that had featured the Indian head cent since 1859. Roosevelt wanted to commemorate the centennial of Abraham Lincoln's birth, and he believed that a coin bearing Lincoln's likeness would be a fitting tribute to the legacy of the 16th president. Brenner's design for the obverse of the new cent featured a right-facing bust of Abraham Lincoln inspired by a photograph taken by Matthew Brady and a plaque Brenner had sculpted years earlier that had already gained wide acclaim. The image captured Lincoln's thoughtful expression and conveyed a sense of dignity and solemnity that resonated with the American public. The reverse of the coin featured two stylized stalks of Durham wheat encircling the words 1 cent and United States of America, with the Latin phrase e pluribus unum. Arching above the wheat reverse was simple, elegant, and symbolic of American agriculture and abundance. Released to the public on August 2nd of that year, it marked the first time a real historical figure appeared on a regular issue U.S. coin, and it was also the first time Lincoln was honored in such a way. The response from the public was immediate and enthusiastic. People lined up at banks and treasury offices to obtain the new cents, and they were quickly hoarded by collectors and everyday citizens alike. The novelty of the design, coupled with the nation's enduring reverence for Lincoln, made the coin an instant sensation. However, the coin also generated controversy in part due to Victor David Brenner's initials, which appeared prominently on the reverse at the bottom center between the wheat stalks. The initials VDB were deemed by some officials and members of the public to be too conspicuous and an inappropriate form of self-promotion for a government-issued coin. This controversy led to the abrupt removal of the initials from the design after only a short run, resulting in two major types of 1909 wheat pennies, the 1909 VDB and the 1909 without VDB. Adding further complexity to the story is the fact that the coin was struck at two mints, the Philadelphia Mint and the San Francisco Mint. The coins struck in Philadelphia bear no mint mark, while those from San Francisco bear a small S below the date on the obverse. Combined with the presence or absence of the VDB initials, this results in 4 distinct varieties for collectors to pursue: the 1909 no VDB, the 1909 VDB, the 1909 S no VDB, and the legendary 1909 SVDB, which is widely regarded as one of the most important and valuable key dates in the entire Lincoln Cent series. The 1909 SVDB is notable, not just for its scarcity with an original mintage of just 484,000 coins, but also for the fervor it has inspired among generations of coin collectors. It represents the perfect storm of historical significance, artistic controversy, low mintage, and collector demand, making it one of the cornerstones of American numismatics. The coin remains highly sought after in all grades and commands, significant premiums especially in uncirculated condition. Beyond its market value, the 1909 wheat penny stands as a testament to a pivotal moment in American history when art, politics, memory, and monetary design intersected in a meaningful way. It marked the beginning of a new era in U.S. coinage, where historical figures replaced allegorical imagery and where coins became more than just instruments of commerce. They became tools of cultural identity and national heritage. In the decades that followed, the Lincoln wheat cent continued to evolve, with minor design modifications, shifts in composition due to wartime needs, and the eventual replacement of the wheat reverse in 1959 by the Lincoln Memorial design to commemorate the sesquicentennial of Lincoln's birth. But no matter how the coin changed over the years, the 1909 issues remained singular in their importance and continue to be a foundational piece in both historical study and collecting passion. Each of the four 1909 varieties analyzing their design elements, minting processes, die markers, and known errors. We will also explore the socio-political environment of the early 20th century to understand why Lincoln was chosen as the first historical figure to appear on a U.S. coin and how his image and legacy were carefully crafted by the designers and engravers involved. We will look at Victor David Brenner's life work and motivations and discuss how his immigrant background shaped his artistic vision and commitment to excellence. We will also examine the market trends and auction histories of the 1909 wheat pennies, comparing price fluctuations over time and offering insights into how collectors can identify genuine specimens, spot counterfeits, and determine proper grading standards for authentication and valuation. Whether you are a seasoned collector looking to expand your knowledge or a curious beginner hoping to learn the roots of American coin, collecting this journey into the 1909 wheat penny will provide you with a rich, immersive experience. So get comfortable, get ready, and join me on this 2-hour exploration of one of the most important and fascinating coins in American history as we uncover of the most important and fascinating coins in American history as we uncover the full story behind the 1909 wheat penny, from artistic inspiration to minting legacy, from political symbolism to collector obsession and everything in between.